At this moment, I'd like to take a moment of silence for our phys ed teacher, Gene Overing, who passed away. He worked for Central Square School District for 28 years. Can I just have a moment, please? Thank you. This time I would like to have a motion for our public hearing. Second, Jim. All in favor? Okay, this time I'd like to introduce Mr. Caladupo. Take over.
And I will defer to our business manager, Maureen Ladd, for the public hearing. Okay.
Good evening. I just wanted to take a moment to review our district safety plan. We have to do this every year. It's always on board packet. And I'm making it a little more official by calling it to the public hearing. Because now they're getting more freaking on the legislative significant items they want to date at the public hearing. So here goes for these. The district safety plan itself, which is the big document, which is H2A in the board packet. It's just a comprehensive multi-hazard school safety plan. It covers all the buildings in the district. It addresses all the crisis interventions, emergency responses, the management at the district level, and it has all the pieces that the education law and the commissioner's regulations are asking for. It was developed years ago by a district-wide school safety committee. I think the state legislation was 2001, so this document is basically similar across the state. Most districts have it. We have a district-wide safety committee that reviews it every year and makes all those changes. This is what it looks like, and it is in the document, and it's on our website always. There are also building-level emergency response plans that address all of these same items at the building level. These are part of the plan. They follow the chain of command, the incident command system. These emergency response plans are developed at the building level with the principals and building-specific teams, and they also are recorded with regulations and guidelines. These are not on the website. We have to submit them into a portal. They're available for the state police and other various police agencies, but they are private from the public. They have too much inside information to be put out there on the website. The district safety plans and the building level plans, as I just said, have to be adopted every year, which is tonight, and then submitted by September 1st. The building level plan has to be secured and submitted to the state police and local law enforcement 30 days after tonight, or by October 15th. And the district-wide plan is on the website. Part of the plan is the code of conduct. This is developed to keep order on the school property at functions, and it governs the conduct of the students, teachers, and personnel. This is also reviewed annually by the safety committee and is considered a part of the school safety plan. So that's also part of this tonight, and it is item H2B in the executive. The code of conduct must be posted on the district website. It's always been there. It's updated every year. And this is what that looks like. This is part of the district website. This public employer emergency health plan is new. It came out at Labor Day of last year. It was due to the pandemic. That basically a piece of the plan that was called the influenza and pandemic plan, which was a small piece of the district-wide plan, was basically pulled out into a much bigger public health plan. Again, in accordance with New York State labor laws, Department of Education laws, it's required in public basically also tonight on the agenda is the poster that has the five emergency actions. And these four documents together basically constitute on board package. The items in yellow are what has been changed this year. All of this came to the district committee. The biggest piece, everything is standard updates except for pulling out of the pandemic plan.
Okay, thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, thank you.
Since there was no questions at this time, I'd like to request a motion to adjourn the vote here.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? This time, next we will open our regular meeting.
Make a motion.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, let's see, community open forum. I have one request for an open forum. This court BOE in regards to pre-committee hearing. Yep. Approximately about 2 or 3 minutes, okay?
I'm just here with the optional mask that was put in place. I just don't, as a parent of a student here, I'm just not comfortable medicating myself. I don't think a blanket slate is appropriate for the district, meaning that not all our students have the option to be vaccinated. So you said yourself that our elementary population is suffering most during COVID because virtual learning isn't appropriate for elementary, anyone that. And parents like myself who don't feel safe to send their child to school without masks or not having classrooms that have masks being required and not consenting to it. So even like myself, my student has doing that go to bed or instead of virtual learning, which isn't productive. So I'm not asking for masks to be required on all the levels, but to be considered for the levels that don't have opportunities to vaccinate. Because I feel like it's choosing inconvenience over safety. And a parent who doesn't feel safe sending their child to home, where a parent that might feel inconvenience might have a likelihood of sending their child sick.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I would like to propose an executive session at approximately 6:39 in regards to discussing matters related to the appointment of a particular person with action to follow. A motion? Second. All in favor?
So, man, what we should have said was, this may be your first time coming up to the voting to ask questions. The board doesn't engage in back and forth and am I in front or sorry? Sorry. Back and forth conversation, but I will be actually approaching this part of the superintendent report, giving the update and discussing all of the matters. So where we normally don't stop and then answer the questions, I will actually be addressing this. We have 2 executive sessions. This is the first one. It's going to be very quick. All right? Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so I'd like to kind of give everybody out there and in here an update on where we are. Is it easier? Oh. I thought you wanted me to go to that right now. Okay, let's rewind that. So I'd like to introduce Melissa Cisco, the person we just had come back from executive session, is she is now one of our new assistant principals at Baltimore High School.
Okay, at this time, item F, can I have a motion to do the consent agenda in its entirety?
I'll make a motion.
Mike motions. And all in favor? Okay, next is item G, board member reports. Let's start off with you, Mrs. Fleischman. Do you have anything for us? You did not. Anyone else on the side? No. I just have one quick thing, and it's from Vanessa. I just wanted to let you know what happened there at BOCES. Ron Southworth is taking over the one-year term. He's replacing Kevin Dix, who was the city BOCES member from Phoenix. And she just wanted to let you guys know that he comes from a trade background and very strongly supports the CTE program. That's for 1 year, and then they'll have a 3-year term up. But I want to let you guys know that. And anyone else?
Tom and I had the opportunity to go to the Cleveland time capsule opening. And they did a real nice job with that. They had a nice pretty truck there for everybody. And it took a little longer than expected, but they finally found him, and it was, the kids had a great time.
We kept digging for about 2 hours. Yeah, we all took turns digging. It was about 6 feet below the ground and about 8 feet long. No, I'm dead serious. It was a drain.
It wasn't like a little, it was huge.
And we have no pictures of the inside of it.
I'll say this.
Myself and a bunch of football players took forever turns to try to dig this up. It was marked, but they said it was only an inch below the flat. No, it was a good 6 feet below. And then roots grew over it after all these years, so you had these thick axe and everything. But at the end of the day, they got it. It was pretty cool stuff.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Delapuccio. Oh, that's okay.
So I just want to do a quick update on the class ranking committee. That was a compilation of counselors, administration, parents, and students. And we had a significant increase in number of students participating in it. We had a 4-hour final wrap-up meeting in July. And the student inputs, I mean, our kids are in this district are amazing, and they have great ideas, and a lot of those ideas were captured. Bottom line with that committee right now is that with everything else going on, class ranking or making any changes to that moment, is one of the highest priorities for the district, for the parents and students within the district. But they are looking at putting in some of the ideas that the students and parents had. So just remembering, and we led that committee, and she did a great job. So, good job. So, there are additional notes that, once it got sent to all the board members, Mr. Martin, who's part of the committee, got it, but he wants more specifics on that.
Kathy, I was just gonna ask if Andy on that, is that gonna be a committee that continues, or should we replace Andy on that committee?
So,
You were on it as a parent though?
Yeah.
So, okay.
So, right now, the committee's wrapped up, and it's all table, but there's what the administration staff has some of they have some takeaways for some of the ideas, but as far as being a recurring, continuous committee, not at this time.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'm going to turn it up to you this time.
All right.
Delapuccio.
All right. So, I just want to kind of give everybody an update on where we are right now. I want to speak loud into this because we're dealing with a fan. I want people to be able to hear this at home. And I know I've received hundreds of calls and emails throughout the pandemic, well, probably thousands there, but definitely over summer where parents really want to know what is going on. So we were reluctant to put anything out because we were told by the state education department that something was going to be coming out. Preferably at the beginning of August, they said, by the governor's office and by the New York State Department of Health regarding the guidelines and the guidance that we were all waiting to get. And then we got word that there would be no such guidance coming out from the New York State Health Department or from the governor's office, and that in fact it was up to each district, and it spelled out superintendent. Well, obviously the superintendents were going to have conversations with their Board of Education. They were going to have conversations with the chief medical officer, ours is Dr. Hamilton in our district, as well as Oswego local health departments, and for us that was the Oswego County Health Department, and for our Onondaga residents in Brewerton, the Onondaga County Health Department. So it always is it's difficult when you're dealing with 2 different health departments, 2 different areas that during the pandemic, Onondaga County, because they have a county executive, Ryan McMahon, they had more leeway than other counties, such as Oswego County, that has a county legislator. So we were kind of dealing with 2 different things when it came to quarantining and the whole contact tracing, than even just our county, our neighbors, just next to us. So when that came out, I had been received, that's when really the top of the fire hydrant pretty much got knocked off, and then that's when the parents started calling nonstop. And my response to them was, and it still is, the same response in that if, now this was last week, I said if the conditions, meaning COVID, number of new cases, transmission rates and whatnot, stayed the same that they were over the summer at September 7th, then we would provide students, provide families with that opportunity to choose with masks or going without masks. And so already there has started to be a change, and we're monitoring that. The county and the Oswego County has now dipped into substantial transmission, which is orange, and I will get into all of that. I'll get into what my recommendation as a superintendent would be. But overall, we want to be able to base decisions on what the current results are out there. And what do I mean by that? So last year, the rule was, back when the New York State Health Department actually told us pretty much everything we could and couldn't do, the only rule starting the school year off was students had to be 6 feet apart, and when they were 6 feet apart, the mask could come off. So that's what we did at Central Square. We monitored it. Some districts jumped right to mask wearing. We said, we're not seeing cases right now, so we're going to actually make our decisions. We're going to let those decisions be driven by actually what's going on in our communities. So that worked for quite some time, and it was interesting because a lot of the districts that went right with masks, for whatever reason, were having massive cases of COVID-19, and we were still the district not having the cases popping up. But then it got into the colder months, and we started to see cases first with staff. That's really what was happening. Staff were bringing it into school. They were the ones that were testing positive, and we were noticing that. I was in frequent conversation with the health department because I'm also the COVID coordinator. So every time that there's a case, I am the point person that then meets up with the building principal and the nurse, and we do the contact tracing. We ask all the questions that the health department asks. We give that information to the health department, and the health department says, okay, based on that information, these are the people that we will be quarantining. Since we won't be able to get to them for 2 or 3 or a week, it would be best if you at the school let them know that they, in fact, are quarantined. They will be getting a call when the health department could get around to making that call. And Oswego County was pretty good. It was manageable. Onondaga County, they were just inundated. So it was really important that we did make those calls because Onondaga County, because they were so inundated with calls, didn't actually get a hold of calling those people until literally like the last day of the 10-day, at that point 14-day quarantine. So it was really good that we were able to do that. I only say that because I don't want anybody to think that we were the ones that did contact tracing and quarantining. We were not. We followed all the guidelines. We just made those calls because we wanted to do it in an expedited fashion. We want the kid getting on the bus, and then 3 days later they're going to call. So I bring this up mainly because we saw that with staff, so we said, okay, all staff members will have to mask up. We still didn't make that rule with with all students under 6 feet apart. Then we started to see the cases uptick in our elementary buildings. And it was interesting because we looked at that. It was pretty much universal that they were getting it from an adult at home, whether parent, relative, whatnot, and then the kids were getting it. But ironically enough, they were not spreading it to the kids in their classroom. And that was not unique to Central Square. That was statewide when we looked at the data. Schools were not considered a community transmission location. Ryan McMahon, county executive in Onondaga County, often said that. The county legislator in Oswego County, James Weatherup, would say that during his YouTube press conferences, and both health departments were saying the same thing. And I stayed in tune with the health departments across the state, and that was pretty much the deal. They were not seeing situations where you're having one kid in the classroom, and then that kid goes home, and then they're seeing other kids were in that classroom was popping up. Therefore, they determined that there was not community transmission within the schools, which was a great sign. One of the big reasons for that is that school districts have always been required, even before COVID-19, to filter in air on a regular basis from outside and then bringing the inside air out. If that happens throughout the day, multiple times in a classroom. That's why it was discouraged of opening windows, because then that was running counteractive to what we were accomplishing. We have probably the best director of facilities in Paul Brissett, who holds multiple certifications in all of these areas, as he has to, and he was wonderful in educating all of us on that. And the health department validated everything that Paul said. So then it got to the point, as I said, where the case started up with students, and then we said, okay, everybody's going to mask up at this point. The numbers were just very, very high across the county, and then we went to that move. I have had the opportunity to speak to thousands of parents. When I say that, we have roughly 3,700 students in the district. We have roughly 10,000 parents, guardians that all get my alerts, and I can say that I've spoken to thousands of our parents, some more than others, but a pretty good cross-section of our entire school community. And what they wanted me to know was, when people are talking about safety, and what they had said to me throughout the summer was, whenever the New York State Health Department puts out their guidelines, because at that point we still thought they were going to put them out, they kept saying, please understand that safety isn't just a cloth mask, that some still challenge is porous and stuff can get in, but regardless, what they said was, there's a difference between tolerating wearing a mask and being comfortable wearing a mask. So I know I have a 9-year-old, I have a 7-year-old. My 7-year-old is on the autism spectrum. Wearing a mask was not a fun activity for him. He tolerated it because he had to, but he was very, very, very uncomfortable. And anybody with an autistic child knows when they fixate on something, they don't let it go. So every time he got off the bus, he would tell my wife that was an issue. My older son, he would pretty much do anything. Did he get frustrating after a while? Yes, especially when they said masks are mandatory all the time and no mask breaks unless they're eating. We don't have any air conditioning in our elementary buildings. That would be, last time we looked at it, it was a $25, $30 million project to put air conditioning in our schools, which is always debated upon. You know, some years we don't have hot weather, some years we do. But I think it's important that we all understand that while some students can tolerate it, and some students, maybe it doesn't even faze them, I've heard from more than enough parents to please take that into consideration. We've heard from child psychologists, child experts in this field, that their cases and their caseloads of children that they've worked with, of mask wearing, and these are the things that come up. So, there could very well be a time that we would not have parents have that choice. And so what I had suggested, just looking at the 4 color-coded categories that's on the CDC's website. Blue, it's a low transition rate, which means out of a total new cases per 100,000, so that's 1 per 100,000 persons in the past 7 days. It's like a rolling average of 100,000 people. For a low transmission rate across the entire county, it would be 0 to 9.99 people. For a moderate transmission, that's yellow, and that would again be out of 100,000 persons, and the rolling 7-day average, that there would be between 10 and 49.99 new cases. For a substantial transmission, which is what Oswego County is in right now, it is 50 to 99.99% new cases per 100,000. And then for a high transmission rate, that is over 100 cases per 100,000 people. So what we noticed last year is when the cases were going up substantially in the county, we were looking at very low numbers within our schools. And I was a little taken by that. So I was talking to people in the healthcare profession, talking to our chief medical officer, talking to a lot of the people that I had to speak with in Onondaga County and Oswego County, because I am also the COVID coordinator. What we were seeing was a lot of these were adults in households, and that when they did give it to a child, that child went home, and for whatever reason, it never made its way to the other kids in the room. And remember, I'm referring to this when we were also, for many months, 6 feet apart without masks. Masks weren't mandated. So, even when we did go to that, there were still obviously mask breaks at our elementary buildings. Well, actually, in all the buildings there were mask breaks. So I bring this up because I want you to know that that's on the CDC website, the 4 transmission rates. And just a recommendation that I have is basically the superintendent has been trusted in every district now in New York State to make this decision, is to, 1, continue to monitor. I put in the parent guardian letter that we don't know what it's going to be like at that point. It's pretty much still almost 4 weeks away. It was 4 weeks ago, 2 days ago, would be September 7th, first day of school. A lot can change. And when it does, we do not have a problem saying, okay, we're looking at, let's say, a high transmission rate in our area. We're seeing the cases in our schools. That at that point, on a high transmission rate, I'll work backwards. That's the red one I just talked about. That is over 100 new cases on a 7-day rolling average out of 100,000 people. That I would recommend that in that case, all staff and students must wear a mask. That's vaccinated and unvaccinated. Going back a step, in orange, that's substantial transmission. My recommendation would be masking optional for all vaccinated and unvaccinated students. All vaccinated and unvaccinated staff must wear a mask at that point. So again, orange, which we currently are, we're at number 85, which it did jump because last Thursday, this past handful of days ago, we were still in moderate when I had written that letter, which means that we had to have been below 49.99. So that jumped to put us at 85. So that almost doubled. So that is something that we are always looking at the numbers, rather than a knee-jerk reaction to go to full-on mask for everybody, not knowing what 4 weeks could be from now. The yellow moderate would be masking optional for all vaccinated and unvaccinated students and all vaccinated staff members. Unvaccinated staff members in the yellow moderate zone, we would still recommend, we would require all staff members that are unvaccinated to have to wear a mask. So the yellow is 10 to 49.99. In the low transmission, that would be 0 to 9.99 new cases on a rolling 7-day average out of 100,000 people. And in the low transmission, that would be making masking optional for all vaccinated and unvaccinated students and staff members. And again, I want to repeat, that's considered low transmission, 0 to 9.9 new cases of COVID-19 on a rolling 7-day average out of 100,000 people. So what I wanted to be able to just say right now is reiterating what went home in the parent guardian letter last week, that we are monitoring what has been going on, and we will make that decision regarding masking based on that concrete numbers that we have, and even looking at the CDC for guidelines there. Now, I want to also say that some people were surprised to find out that didn't have kids in summer school, because nobody should have been surprised, parent or guardian, that had a student in our elementary, middle, or high school summer school, because we let them all know, all the parents knew that masking would be optional. We felt that that would be a change for them, and we wanted them to be aware before they put their child in the summer school program. So with the numbers with that, since we're talking about numbers, that just finished last week, we had a total of 200 students at the high school. 175 of them was determined that they went unmasked. We had 100 students in the middle school. It was determined that 75 of them opted to go unmasked. And we had 55 first graders at the elementary level, with roughly 42, 43 of them that had went unmasked. We did not have any issues And there was actually one student in the high school that was in close contact to a relative that was positive. That child was quarantined, never contracted it, never spread it anywhere. And in the middle school, there were 2 students considered close contacts to family outside of school contacts. They never contracted it and they never shared it. So in looking at that data, it was, none of this is an easy decision, but it was easy for us to wrap our brains around the fact that if those conditions were to stay the same, then we didn't need to jump to saying 4 weeks from now, we are going to go with masking of everybody. Because I want people to understand we do look at the data. We don't just go on fear or anticipation, but we actually use the data, and that's how we did it last year. So we are going to continue to monitor the situation. What I just said with the color coding, that is the first time that the board is hearing this. I wanted to be able to have this discussion so nobody at home thought that conversations were happening that they weren't a part of. We have been very transparent as a district throughout our time here, before the pandemic, after the pandemic, right now during the pandemic, and I don't want that to change. I will still be sending, every time there was a COVID case, we sent something to all of the parents per school. So at first I was sending stuff out to, you can be a parent of a child with Brewerton, and then I was getting parents saying, why are you sending all the info? I don't need to know about AA Cole or whatnot. So then what we did was, I made separate links that if you were at Brewerton and that's what the case was, the parents all got that. It was a Blackboard alert that went to them. But then on the website, I put all of them under the COVID information. There was no hiding of any cases. Everybody could see everything. So then when we shifted to mandatory masking for everybody, we had the information. People saw the cases. There was no confusion. They could see that. So again, there is still a tremendous amount of time prior to the start of the school year. A lot of things can change. Things can go in either direction, and we'll adjust that accordingly. The one thing that we are looking at right now is the idea of providing a remote option. So this is a very difficult thing that districts are kind of grappling with right now. So at this point, we're not guaranteeing a remote option. We are looking into this for many reasons right now. But I want people to know, because I'm getting phone calls, are you looking into the remote options? If we do and are able to have a program that is a remote option, we will be upfront with all parents and letting them know exactly what that remote option looks like. So they don't assume that it's going to be the fully remote option that was on the table last year. I can't imagine a remote option looking like it did last year with our Central Square teachers running it. It would be a BOCES program. They would be running that. And it would be a full commitment for the entire year because the price tag per student is at least $11,000. So if you do the math, we're a district of 3,700 students, we would have to then dedicate a substantial amount of funds to that remote option, and that they would have to stay with that. Again, as of right now, we don't have remote option choices that are on the table, but we are currently exploring everything. So if conditions did go in a direction like they did last year, we will be able to have that option for people. So that's currently where we are at right now. I wanted everyone watching this at home, I'm sure I'll get phone calls this evening and tomorrow and more emails, which is fine. We have a lot of parents in the district that are very appreciative that they have the right to choose if the conditions obviously warrant that. They recognize right now that if the conditions mirrored where they were a week ago and what it looked like in the summer, that they at least know that we would not jump to the maximum requirement, knowing what wearing a mask does for a lot of kids, going back to my tolerating versus feeling comfortable feeling. So if it's warranted, if the cases that we're seeing, if it gets into that high transmission rate, and that some people will still argue and say, really, 100 cases in the whole entire county where our district could have 64,000 people, and within our own district we may only have 20 cases, you would still do that. So any way you look at this, there are people that will not be happy. I completely understand. As a superintendent, I've had to make decisions. I have yet to make a decision where everyone says, I love it, and I get it. But that's why America is great, that people can have a disagreement, people can stay calm. I love having those conversations. I did receive approximately 6 emails from parents that were concerned. There were 6. And I was able to give them information, and at least 3 of them said, thank you so much for explaining the fact that you will be looking at the cases, and if you see a spike and whatnot, that you would absolutely pull the trigger into increasing that next step. And I had many people also thank me for not doing the knee-jerk reaction, given the fact that September 7th is still a little ways out. So, if any board members have questions with that right now, you want to ask questions, you can ask me questions right now. Or if you want to just kind of let this sink in, as always, you know, you call me and we talk and whatnot. That's pretty much it.
I have a quick one. What's our chances of having this public little diagram on our website for parents?
Yeah, so I absolutely did not want to put that on the website until I at least shared it with the board, my 9 bosses, to take a look at that and really chew on that. Because I do want to say that I have already spoken last week with Dr. Hamilton, our Chief Medical Officer, and she was absolutely not opposed. She was in agreement that you have to look at everything. I don't know if the general community out there knows how many wellness checks that we had to do with our special patrol officers, with counselors, school psychologists, and administrators, because the mental health of our students was struggling. And there were a lot of parents that were saying the mental toll of these kids not being able to see their peers' faces and just that whole feeling with that played a role on that. Parents shared that with us. So the mental health visits were not just to be able to go in and be proactive to thwart off possible suicide rates, because as we know, Oswego County leads the entire state in suicide. There were some very difficult situations that we had to deal with last year. And I give kudos to our staff, kudos to Kristen Enright, high school principal and her team, and all of our special patrol officers to be able to connect. The problem really exists when we have that remote option and a lot of students had just turned their cameras off. And so it's very difficult for a teacher, with how great, no matter how great they are, to really be able to gauge body language and whatnot. I had students at the high school catch me on their last day of summer school, and they had asked me, because my office is in the high school, if they were going to be afforded that same option of a remote. This is where the remote option is very hard for me to come out with that remote option, because out of, it was actually 11 kids, none of them had masks on, and I had asked them, I said, I'm just curious, have you been vaccinated? 8 of them said yes, fully vaccinated. We did it for sports, we did it for clinics that we do, whatnot. We just thought it would be easier to do this. The other 3 weren't concerned about COVID, didn't feel that they needed to worry about it. They felt that they would share about the same mentality with their parents, which again, we respect all parents and their right to make decisions in their homes. But I said to them, so clearly, if you're not afraid of COVID, why do you want it? Now, I realize that's different than the conversation that the speaker today was in elementary, they don't have the opportunity, they're younger kids, whatnot. But their response was, well, it really worked out well for our friends who were seniors, and it was really kind of convenient for them to be able to do that, and it was easier to do that for them. Albeit, we had this conversation in summer school. And I said that to them, and they kind of laughed and understood. I think their exact words were, true that, that's right. So I don't want to say that it didn't work for some of our very independent students that still thrive at home. Because our teachers did an amazing job having to do something that they never had to do before, and they utilized Canvas, one learning platform, because parents had said they couldn't do Schoology, Google Classroom, Kahoot, and all these other things. We did it, our teachers, it was a huge lift for them, they rose to the occasion, and it was great. But even with that, a lot of the students had shut off their cameras, so teachers were teaching to blank screens. So it was like the Brady Bunch with just 2 of the characters present and black screens to everybody else. That's very hard for teachers to do as well. So I just want the community to know we're still looking at all of this. We're watching the cases. We know in Oswego County, what do you call it here? Central Square are zip codes that make up Central Square, and the zip code in Onondaga County that makes up Brewerton and our residents that are in Onondaga County, that we have a really good vaccination rate. When I have all the data. I have the data for a percentage of 65 plus population that 1 dose, the 65 plus fully vaccinated, and overall we are in. If you look at that range, we're in a really good spot. I don't want to, delineate between Hastings or Mallory or Bernards Bay, but I'm going to tell you, all of those, it's anywhere between 80% up to 100% of the 65 plus eligible people in that community, they got vaccinated. You jump down to the 35 to 64, we're still in the top group out of our county. And that's great. But I also don't want those people to feel like I'm judging them if they didn't get vaccinated. We have one big vaccination clinic here, one housed at the Walmart pharmacy. A parent is the pharmacist over there. And then that parent said, hey, we've got a lot more of these for 12 and up. I blasted that out. She's a parent. She said, Tom, since you sent that out, we've got a lot more walk-ins. So that's currently where we are at. It is a moving situation. It's very fluid. We are looking at this constantly. So if we have people in the audience, if we have people out there that think right now, oh my gosh, they're starting the school year off and they're making it optional for the students, I just want to direct them back to what I had written in that letter, and that's based on the current situation at that time. Thank you. Real quick, because I do have a couple things that aren't COVID related in my superintendent report. Summer music program, Mr. Haldeman thanked the entire district, the principals, and everybody for encouraging and for the support that they gave for the program and students. Also, he thanked the teachers who ran the program and provided opportunities for in-person sessions and ensemble experiences, and some of the students had not been able to experience for such a very long time. The summer music program concert was the culmination of a 2-week music program organized and run by 7 Central Square School District music teachers and hosted by the Central Square Middle School. The concert took place on July 29 in the middle school gymnasium, and the parents and friends were able to attend. Other opportunities that students had included the summer garden program that was organized by Andrew and Tammy and Paris Graziano, the whole family thing there, and the Red Hawk Regiment marching band that is under the new direction of Mr. Mark Woods. Thank you to everyone for allowing the students to have these great opportunities. So for the practices there, in music and band and sports, again, that was optional. When I say, I give you summer school numbers, but we were running basketball camps in that gym using camp rules with 90% of the students unmasked throughout the entire summer. There were no issues. A big thank you to the staff who worked during the summer and our summer school program. Nathan Dembrowski, Maureen Langius, Martina Sullivan, Nicole Thabato, Kimberly Lacey, Heather Gulo, Raymond Harn, Todd James, Anna Adamski, Jill Murphy, our nurse at the high school, Stacy Guerin, Joy Bedoz, Rachel Rock, Sarah Cunningham, Allison Casella, and Katie McGowan. Also, to the students that attended summer school that ended on past Thursday, with a 70% passing rate and about 180 courses recovered with credit. That is outstanding for course recovery. Many students were able to recover 2 classes in the 60-day program that were also 3 August graduates. With 3 August graduates, I got to tell you, one of them came to my office I don't want to say the name out loud, that wouldn't be appropriate, but Kristen Enright smiling in the audience because he wanted me and her to know that while he didn't start off on the right path at Central Square, didn't take school seriously, fell in love with the BOCES program of welding, and he wants to not only make the district proud, but he wants to make his family proud and go on to be a welder, which touches upon the multiple pathways that we have in this district where we don't try to jam square pegs into a circle hole. I love the fact that we have the kids that can graduate with a 2-year associate degree, CCC or OCC. I love the fact that now it seems like every year we get kids that are offered entrance to Ivy League schools, and the number of students that are being accepted into the military academies is outstanding. We have a huge number of people in our community, active and retired service in the military. That is something that kind of binds all of our separate communities together. Every time at summer school, every time at graduation, I say anybody in the audience that's active in the military or retired from the military, please stand up. And literally, it's like 3/4 of the people stand up, and all of the students, whether they've been accepted to the military academy or are enlisting, you see all the students stand up and everybody applauds. And then we have those students that go right into the workforce, like the student that told me that he wants to go on and be a welder. So that's a testament to all of the students, but also those parents that don't listen to the myth and the unfortunate, horrible things that were told years ago in schools. When the BOCES bus pulled up, they were called negative words. We don't believe that here in this district because those kids will always have a skill set. So Central Square is a place for all students. Thank you.
Tom, last year, I remember the education, it was the Department of Health, they put out a series of guidelines with respect to the nurse's office visits and students being sent home with bad symptoms. Is that continuing this year?
That would still be in effect in the health department. So I don't want anybody to think we've dropped all of that. So the quarantines, that's still there. All of the guidance that they gave us that said, okay, there's a close contact, they go by the same thing. And I think it's important that all the parents know that that's irrelevant if the student has a mask or not. So it used to be thought at the beginning of the pandemic that if anybody in that student did not have a mask on, it didn't matter where they were seated, they were automatically, let's say they're in the elementary, it goes over that 2-hour threshold, they were automatically going to court. That is not the case. The way that it ended in spring was, mask or unmasked, it's only the people within the 6-foot radius of that student, because everybody recognized that there's not community spread in the elementary, I keep saying elementary, in all of our schools. So what I will say is that the CDC actually has the authority over public transportation, i.e. school buses. So therefore, in any one of these situations at Central Square, whether we're in blue, yellow, orange, or red, on the school buses, students, because they won't be social distance anymore, one student per seat, there will be students sitting next to people on buses in most cases. They will be asked to wear a mask when they are on the bus. But to answer your question, all of those, and that will go back out to the parents, what the health departments in Onondaga County, if you're in Brewerton, in Oswego County, if you're here, what they say has to happen for quarantine, which is another reason why we were working with the teachers union, the biggest union, but it's going to be all of our staff. We really need to know if staff members are vaccinated. We cannot make them feel bad for not getting vaccinated, but we have to have that on file for a number of reasons. First reason, if the health department comes in and does what just happened in New York City, where all unvaccinated staff members have to be tested once a week, we need to be able to know how many of these rapid tests, COVID-19 tests that we have to order on a weekly basis. The other thing is, it's really a misnomer to think that we don't already really know which staff members are fully vaccinated, because whenever there was a close contact in the classroom, the first thing that we had to determine for the local health department was if, first off, was the staff member fully vaccinated, and if the staff member was not fully vaccinated and they were deemed a close contact, then that staff member, originally it was a 14-day quarantine, we would get a substitute for that teacher, or it turned to 10 days. Now, the way that it ended was if they're fully vaccinated staff member or now student, because while they're older and they're not exhibiting any symptoms, then they do not need to be quarantined. We let the parent know, monitor and whatnot. So that's another reason, if we have that information, and any of the school nurses can attest to this, we usually found out that there was a case when a parent contacted us and it was about 7 o'clock at night. So it was really important that we were able to quickly find out, proof-wise. We were having them take pictures, they would send it to us, then we knew that the staff member was fully vaccinated, because you had to have your second shot, you had to have a 2-week period after that. But then also, we knew that, that they didn't have any symptoms. So,
Okay, but the other part of my question was when students get sent out of the nurse's office with runny nose, are those students still being sent home and can't come back without a negative test, or how's that?
so that's something right now we're still seeking guidance from the health department, that what does that mean that students could possibly have COVID symptoms? What does that look like right now? To me, that was one of the #1 things I was hoping that we were going to be getting when they kept saying, you're going to be getting something in August, you're going to be getting something. That's what I wanted, because I wanted to get that all the parents. Because right now, districts are all wondering. Some are doing like cards. Parents take their kid's temperature. We still have the bus thing, and kids scan. So what some districts are basically doing is saying, okay, here it is, parents. Here are all of the most updated symptoms for COVID. If your child is experiencing any of these, obviously one of them is a fever, then don't put your child on the bus and then contact us and get your child tested. That is something we're still waiting to hear. And again, luckily we're still approximately 4 weeks out. But when I get all this information, we will obviously blast it out to all parents and put it on our website.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Well, I was just, it's, the only thing I would do, because I have to check this list every day in my job, and we just went through this last week as far as how we're going to let the rules operate and how we're going to go. Our biggest concern was the up and down of this list, right? Sometimes you're yellow, sometimes you're orange, sometimes you're red. So, we come up with a 2-week cycle. So once you make a decision, this is what it's going to be. You're in it for 2 weeks and then reevaluate it. So I'm not saying that 2 weeks is the magic bullet here, but
That's what we were saying too.
yeah. So that you're not in and out. I mean, because I see on Facebook, parents want to know whether it's an 8 weeks senior B day. This times it by 100. So yeah. So we have to check it every day. So it's what I do, but
Anyone else? Yes,
So, a follow-up question. So, let's say we're on that rolling number, if you will, of days before we determine whether, move down to the next stage or check and color for the transmission list. How are we gonna spread the word?
Okay, yeah. Yep. Question? It will be blasted out. So just like what I did every time we had a case and it went right on the website, but this would be blasted out to everybody that they would know. It would operate on a 2-week basis. So for 2 weeks, if we are in the substantial transmission zone, we would go when I had requested for that. If all of a sudden the cases drop down, just like it did at the end of last year, it just dropped significantly, then for those next 2 weeks coming up, that's what it would be. We would continue to monitor. The other question people are asking me, I had several parents say, the New York State sports came out like 3 weeks ago and said there will be no restrictions for sports. But again, that's one of those things where now we have to look at that as well, and deal with actual numbers and stay in contact with the health departments and whatnot, and what is safe and what is not safe. Because football practice is going to be starting up soon with double sessions, football and whatnot. So we just want to make sure that we actually have the data to be able to make informed decisions.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Kelly, so thank you very much. Move on to item H1, the approval of the second reading of proposed district policy 5640 regarding smoking tobacco. I'll make the motion. Okay. districtwide safety plan. Can I have a motion? Thanks, Wood. And Mr. Longley, all in favor? And a proposed executive session, in regards to executive session discussing matters related to the tenure of one particular person, negotiation, conducted pursuant to the Taylor Law involving CSSD, and a matter relating to the employment of one particular person, all with no action to follow. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All in favor? Yeah, there'll be no action to follow, so we're just going to adjourn from there. Thank you.